Hello, welcome to Renew Our Minds. When I first started memorizing the Bible, I would sometimes mix up the order of verses or similar phrases or skip verses. Then I learned about a memorization technique called the journey method. It has been a game changer. If you experience similar challenges and want to learn how to use this technique, in the upcoming slides we will go through what is the journey method and how to use it when learning Matthew chapter 6 verses 25 to 34 in the English Standard Version. This is an intermediate level tutorial geared towards those who have a habit of memorizing, are learning long passages, and are gaining proficiency in different memorization techniques. If this is your first time hearing about the journey method, I want to assure you that it is worth the effort to learn how to use it. I compare memorization methods to a toolbox. Let's say I needed to install 100 nails into drywall. I could use a hammer or a power drill. A power drill costs more and there's a steeper learning curve, but it could also get the job done quicker with less effort and higher quality. In the same way, there is a more upfront work with the journey method and a learning curve. However, once I learned how to use it, it has been a game changer in memorizing the Bible, especially with long passages, chapters, and books. So my goal in this step-by-step tutorial is to help you learn how to use this powerful memorization technique. Let's jump right in. So what is the journey method? An explanation I have come up with is the following. The journey method is a memorization technique where you assign numbers to items along a route. These items can be buildings, street names, or other landmarks. Then, as you learn a Bible passage or anything else you want to remember, you associate the number along the route with the number of the verse. Other names or variations of this memorization technique include the journey technique, method of loci, and memory palace. I understand the journey method as a type of memory palace. The journey method is applied to traveling along a route from one place to another, whereas a memory place can also be applied to stationary locations. For example, you can create a memory palace using the rooms in your home or your office. Let's go through how we would apply this memorization technique. I break it down into 2 steps. First, create the journey, then apply the journey to the passage you are learning. Starting with step 1, let's go over some key points to keep in mind when creating the journey. When I first started using this memorization technique, I did the opposite of what I'm going to share here. But once I followed these points, the journey method became an invaluable tool. Compared to a power drill that I mentioned in the introduction, if I use it correctly, then it can help me accomplish the job. 4 key points to follow when creating the journey method would be choosing a route that you are familiar with. For example, your commute to work or school, or driving through town, or walking through your favorite park. Choose memorable items along the route, or things that stand out to you. Choose items in order along the route. I will share an example of my journey method going through a local town, and I stayed with items along one side of the road. I didn't zigzag or go out of order because that would make the journey confusing. After creating the journey, practice mentally walking through it so that it is familiar to you before memorizing the Bible verses. Since we are learning verses 25 through 34 in Matthew 6, I will start with number 25 on the journey. So number 25 is a brunch cafe. How do I remember number 25 corresponds with this place? Well, I have been there at least 25 times since it's a neat place to meet up. They also have a large menu with over 25 items. In other words, you want to note any associations, distinctive features, or memory aids that will help you correlate the number with the item along the journey. I'll share a few more correlations I've come up with as we go through this journey example. So the next stop on the journey is an intersection with Cook Road. Number 27 is McDonald's. Number 28 is Hobby Lobby. I correlate number 28 with this craft store since my sister, who loves doing crafts, has a birthday on the 28th of the month. Number 29 is Aldi, my favorite grocery store. Because of their prices, I can buy a lot with $29. Number 30 is Dunkin' Donuts. To remember the number 30, I think of 3 dozen donuts, and the donuts are shaped like the number 0. Number 31 is CVS Pharmacy. Then I arrive at another intersection with Royalton Road, number 32. After the intersection, there's a Chamber of Commerce, number 33. Next door is a Mexican restaurant, number 34. So now that the journey has been created, we're ready for the second step, which is to apply it to the Bible passage. There are some key points to keep in mind. First, match the number of the verse to the journey. So verse number 25 corresponds with the 25th item along the journey. Second, create associations between the verse and the journey. I will show examples, but keep in mind we all have different experiences and backgrounds, so different things will come to mind when we make these associations. For example, when I hear the word tab, the first thing I think of is a tab in an Excel spreadsheet because I use this software application often. However, someone else may think of a restaurant tab or a tabby cat. So when you create your own journey method, jot down the things that come to your mind. Third, visualize these associations. It is easier to remember something when you can paint a mental picture. So starting with verse 25, Jesus tells us not to be anxious about food or clothing. Since item number 25 on my journey is a brunch cafe, I picture eating and drinking coffee here when recalling this verse. In verse 26, Jesus provides an example of why we shouldn't be anxious, by observing the birds that are taken care of by our Heavenly Father. So my association to number 26 on the journey is to visualize a flock of birds sitting on the traffic signal poles at this intersection. Verse 27 says, "And which of you by being anxious can add a single hour to his span of life?" I picture a large clock with 13 instead of 12 divisions at McDonald's, which is number 27 along the journey. Something I discovered as I've been memorizing is that the more the visual is out of the ordinary, such as a clock with 13 hours, the easier it is to remember. Give it a try yourself. Flower lilies are mentioned in the next verse, which corresponds with Hobby Lobby as the journey method item. So I picture a store display with lilies when reciting this verse. The next stop on the journey is a grocery store, Aldi. Verse 29 talks about the flower lilies and compares them with King Solomon's attire. Of course, Aldi was not around at this time, but to remember the order of the verses, I think of the king's servants purchasing fruits and vegetables from Aldi. The next stop on the journey is Dunkin' Donuts. The word picture here is a dozen donuts baking in the oven. Now we are at verse number 31, which corresponds with CVS Pharmacy. I have thought about this passage repeatedly since I first memorized it in the midst of a challenging job situation. In this passage, Jesus has been providing a prescription for anxiety, including trusting that our Heavenly Father will provide for us faithfully. So number 32 corresponds with an intersection with Royalton Road, where there's a large town square. This lawn is frequently filled with people during holidays and other events. So the word picture here is a scavenger hunt at this town square, bringing to mind the phrase, "For the Gentiles seek after all these things." This brings us to the 33rd verse, which corresponds with the Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber of Commerce is involved in developing the economy of the town or city in which it resides, including jobs. I mentioned that I first learned this passage during a challenging job situation, and as I sought God for His help and for His wisdom, I remember how He helped me through these challenges. This corresponds with what the verse says here. The 34th item along the journey is a Mexican restaurant, and the verse says, "Therefore do not be anxious about tomorrow, for tomorrow will be anxious for itself. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble." Since my memories at this restaurant conjure up big, delicious meals, the word picture that comes to my mind is that today's troubles already comprise a full plate, so I shouldn't worry about tomorrow. Now it's your turn to try it out. First, before you start memorizing verse by verse, let's try out what you can recall from the example we've gone through so far. Pause this video and see how many items along the journey and the gist or summary of the verses you can recall. After resuming the video, how did it go? I remember when I first tried out a journey method example, I was surprised to see how my brain could connect the dots so quickly, even before I started memorizing the verses word by word. Next, try creating your own journey in associations to these verses. I included a template here for you to use. Now you are ready to memorize verse by verse at your own pace, mentally walking through your journey and associations. I hope this video was helpful in learning how to use the journey method in memorizing the Bible. If you have any questions or things you would like to see in future videos, feel free to leave a comment or email me at renewerminds12@gmail.com. Thank you for watching.